You might believe that Sweden's first world record in freediving was made by an athletic man with huge lungs, a strong mind, and a professional team supporting him. But it was made by me, a girl in her 20s, a repressed and slightly depressed former competitive swimmer with immigrant parents who started to develop new perspective on leadership by becoming my own coach. Through my life, I've met many leaders, and I've been a part of many different achievements cultures, but only one won me a world record. Ever since I was born, I had this strong relationship to water, and I think that one of those reasons might be that my mother discovered the bathtub as the babysitter. As quick as she put me there, I was satisfied and happy for hours. So to me, the world of water quickly became a quiet and beautiful place, far from others' demands and even gravity. Later in my life, it developed to an arena for personal development. Growing up, I had some really lovely people around me, and one of them is Pirjo, who wasn't only my mother's best friend, but also an expert on creating the absolutely optimal achievement culture. But I don't think that Pirjo knew this herself. You know, when I was with her, I always felt loved and respected. And from that base of love and respect, she always encourages me to take my next step. So, on this picture, we are collecting sand from the bottom. And on the first one, she's using her words and behavior to establish positive images and the right emotions. And on the second picture, I already know that I can do it. And when I know that, I dive down. Pirjo didn't try to push me. She just encouraged me one playful step at a time and treated my new self-esteem with delicate care. So, at the age of 5, my mother took me to the local swimming club. But it was a world of difference between how I used to feel with Pirjo and how I started to feel as a swimmer. I was always put in relations against the other swimmers. And at the competitions, we shared on each other because that was what our coach has told us to. But in the dressing room, the intrigues and exclusion was a fact, and no one could ever tell who was going to be the next victim. My coach told me that there can only be one winner, and the harder I train, the better I'd get. Everything had to be measurable. My personal records, how many meters I swam, how fast my competitors swam, which pulse I had, when I should start, and so on. It was like my joy and inner drive was replaced by someone else's agenda, and I was just one of many cards to play in the bigger game of finding someone talented enough to become the next Olympic swimmer, because that was the goal of my coach. The swimmer's world was an insecure and hostile environment. To be able to survive, I started to isolate myself, becoming that odd, lonely girl. So why didn't I just quit? Well, the identity as a great swimmer, that gave me a taste of a better world. I was this prodigy who had qualified for the Swedish national championship, and not this random person from the poorer part of the suburbs, where the houses are high and the social problems many. As a swimmer, I encountered what could be described as 3 myths of performance. But later I discovered that they didn't only belong to the world of sport, but rather that sport just adapted the common mentality of performance and leadership convictions. So, winners and losers, high performers, low performers, either you got it or you don't. This is one of the myths that I now see everywhere, and it's so established it's even hard to detect. But performance convictions always become leadership convictions. So when I look at my coach today, I see that his thought that his duty was to separate the high performers from low performers. It was to seek and separate, not build and cooperate. No pain, no gain. The harder you train, the better you'll get. The harder you work, the more money and status you'll earn. This myth created a leader who believed his role was to always push the swimmers to their limits. No matter the costs, as long as we were at the peak of our performance, he'd succeeded. And according to my coach, goals were to be smart. His role was to present measurable goals so that the swimmers always knew what was expected of them. Leaders using this model often miss the difference of being the one that measures and the subject being measured. I gave up my identity as a swimmer, but I couldn't stay away from water. So I remember I went to the pool on public time one day just for the fun of it. This time I was swimming out of pure joy and love of being in the water. And when I came up, I met my coach. And this time he didn't have that grumpy face that I was used to. Instead, he was smiling from ear to ear. And he said, "Yamina, I have never seen you swim with such an amazing technique before. You have to start swimming again." And I said, "Thank you, sir, but I like my life better now." Most of us swimmers stopped at the age of 16. But the dream of my coach of having an Olympic swimmer did come true. He imported one from another club. If goals are to be specific, measurable, time-bound, he'd succeeded. I'm just curious what would have happened if we would have known that we were loved and respected no matter what, and from that base tried to do our best. All I can say is that when I had that environment around me, I broke a world record. So, how did I start freediving? It was through this lovely creature. I was snorkeling in Indonesia, and suddenly this spaceship of a fish came up to me and chose me as his playmate. We were starting to follow each other in a beautiful dance. And the only thing that stopped me from staying longer was my lack of air. So when I got back to Sweden again, I wanted to know everything about how I could hold my breath for a longer time. And who could learn me that better but professional freedivers? So, in the freediving sport, there are 3 basic disciplines. Either you hold your breath as long as you can, or you swim as deep in the sea as you can, or you swim as long as you can in the pool. And I liked the last one, swimming in pool as far as possible. So, in the beginning of my freediving career, I started to recreate what I thought was a good environment for success. I was back in the pool. I got a coach who wrote my programs and who could set the goals for me. So it didn't take long before I was standing at the end of the pool at my first record attempt. I remember the cold water I had around my body and how I was peeking out through the foggy goggles. I also remember that I thought that if I didn't succeed with my goal, I would be a completely loser. So I remember I just took one big breath and then I swam like crazy. And all I can remember was that suddenly I just woke up by somebody dubbing me in the face like this, saying, "Yamina, Yamina, wake up." I had pushed myself to a blackout, but it was going to get even worse. The defeat I felt was striking me so hard that it took years to build myself up again. From the perspective I had then, I was a complete failure, a non-worthy loser. And it took a lot of mental training to change those perspectives. I wonder how it happened that when I didn't push myself, when I was just in the water for fun, I could swim longer than the current world record. But now when I was trying so hard, no pain, no gain, right? I even found it unfair. What if everything I had learned about performance was incorrect? But this loss brought me the most valuable thing that could happen. I was forced to change and build a new performance culture from within. Because in freediving, the mental aspect is everything. So at the same time as I was studying to become a mental trainer counselor, I was trying out all the mental techniques in the pool. Holding your breath under the water is like entering a new world where your thoughts become so much clearer. And I was observing my thoughts for hours, days, weeks, months, and even years. And I noticed that when my thoughts were bright and happy, when I talked to myself so that I felt encouraged and loved, I could swim far longer. Once again, it started to become a performance culture that focused on joy, learning, and development. You know, period style. So, to summarize, I changed the negative conversation with myself. It changed me as a person. And when I changed, the world was changing around me. The 3 myths evolved into something that I call the 3 piths, that is much more organic. So, the first one, learning is winning. I discovered that the natural mind of peak performance is like a child who's starting to walk. Being fully absorbed by the moment, there is no place left for comparing oneself to someone else. There is no winning or losing. Focus is the learning, and the learning is the purpose. If we learn from all situations, from good or bad, from standing and falling, we develop so much faster than if we think in terms of win and loss. The role of the leader is not to try to predict who is going to be a winner and who is not. The role of the leader is to contribute to that learning and winning environment that gives all of us the opportunity to become better versions of ourselves. If my coach would have been in the listen and the heart to the heart and brain conviction instead of no pain, no gain conviction, and I told him that I wasn't motivated anymore, he probably would have said, "Tell me, what has happened, Yamina?" By listening and connecting himself to my world, using his own empathy and wisdom, I'm sure that he could have helped me to find my motivation again. When we truly listen to ourselves and to the people in our organizations, we gain so much more knowledge, energy, and joy that we'll never know if we just try to push it. No pain, no gain is just like driving a car on the 5th gear, no matter if the road is a highway or a driveway. And we all know the difference in energy level and result between doing something out of force or when we are aligned. When I dreamt about the world record, it wasn't the specific, measurable, attainable goal that gave me the motivation. It was rather the vision of a new Yamina, free of fear, who had the inner strength to even handle the biggest challenge of them all, to set a world record. And I think that you can imagine how satisfying the goal felt for me. What created an even stronger motivation was that I stood a chance of becoming the person I wanted to become. And that influenced how I prioritized my time, my energy, my whole life. It was always within me. I was the one who had chosen my own goal, and it wasn't set from a feeling of competition, but rather giving me a respectful chance to grow and becoming the person I wanted to become. And altogether, this was so tickling, like happy fluttering butterflies in my stomach. So, one magic morning, I received an invitation from two of the most serious freedivers in the world, Peter Pedersen and Stig Åvall Severinsen, who were planning a world record attempt weekend in their hometowns in Denmark. Little did I know that this was going to be the most challenging and amazing weekend of my life. Meeting Peter and Stig, two such accomplished freediver, was mind-blowing. I started to fall into my own patterns of isolating myself to control the nervous chaos in my mind. Day 3 had me completely exhausted. I had failed 2 days in a row, and nothing was going to look like I was going to manage this day either. But it's by staying in your vulnerability, listening, instead of fighting it, that you have the ability to grow stronger than ever. I felt I already had lost everything, and because of that, I had nothing more to lose. And right then, Stig said to me, "We're going to do everything, Yamina." So they did. When I needed them the most, they stepped forward as true leaders do. This picture says everything about the performance culture they represented. Because they found me where I were and connected to me emotionally, I dared to open up and let go of that struggle in my mind. I filled my head and my heart with the words, the jokes, and the love they gave me. And in this synergy, I became so much stronger than I could ever be alone. And I made the peak performance of my life. The woman who once was a scared little swimmer became the first Swedish freediver to break a world record. Today, 11 years later, I'm helping leaders and organizations to develop and grow. Imagine what could happen if all organizations, companies, and even countries were more emotionally connected in their leadership and performances. I wonder how much better we could perform. And I wonder how much better it could make us feel.